Thank you all very much. It's a great honor to be here with our Hong Kong Foundation. Even though I'm not from Hong Kong, I feel like I'm part of our Hong Kong being here. It's a great pleasure to be back in Hong Kong. And I'm going to speak from the point of view of an academic and the role of scholarship and academic exchange. This is my first time, really only my second time back in Hong Kong in the last 3 years. I used to go to China and Hong Kong 6 or 8 times a year. And in these last 3 years, as we know, so much has changed. So little, seemingly, collaboration, for example, between American universities and the universities in Greater China because of COVID. So little cooperation, sadly, between our two countries. So much has been lost. The single motivating purpose of my being here again, just last week in Shanghai and then above all this week in Hong Kong, is to restart my own university's engagement, Harvard's engagement with Greater China, with the great educational partners that we have had and that we will have again in the world of Greater China. I love Hong Kong, and I love its institutions of higher learning. I had the honor of serving for 10 years on the UGC and the University Grants Committee, watching and advising as Hong Kong's universities expanded their reach internationally and also to the Chinese mainland, watching them as they introduced extraordinary new programs in liberal arts education as the universities went to 4-year programs. I had the pleasure of serving on governance review committees for Hong Kong University, on the Center for Chinese Studies Board at Zhongwen Daxue, and I have the great honor of being an honorary doctorate recipient from 2 remarkable institutions, Hong Kong PolyU and Hong Kong Baptist Universities. So I feel, as a scholar, truly home here in Hong Kong. Now, these last 3 years have been insulating and isolating for all of us. This is why we must re-engage. Now, some people will say, on both sides of the Pacific, do we really need to re-engage in collaborative research, writing, and teaching? After all, our countries are seemingly at odds in various ways, and American universities, well, for the moment, they still rank reasonably well in the world, and some in China say, well, China should pursue a 中国特色的教育. But whoever argues this simply does not know the world of universities. The book that I have recently written called The Empires of Ideas, Creating the Modern University from Germany to America to China, shows how great national systems of universities, first in Europe, then in North America, but also here in East Asia, in the world of Greater China, have changed the world. And that is why one thinks, for example, the need to ensure that our own engagement, for example, the engagement of my own university here in Greater China, is so important, because nowhere in the world is there more of the best human capital than there is here in Hong Kong and in the Chinese mainland. Nowhere in the world is there a greater commitment to higher education. I witnessed it here in Hong Kong, and no place in the world is spending more and investing more in the future of higher education than the Chinese mainland. Right before COVID, I had the honor of accompanying Harvard's president, Larry Bacow, to Beijing, where we went with President Xi Jinping. And President Xi made it very clear to us that he wanted more, not less, engagement academically with the United States, that he sought to send more, not fewer, students to the United States. He told us that he had told President Trump, if you limit the number of Chinese students going to the United States, you are doing a great favor for Europe. And he's not wrong in that regard. President Xi believes very strongly in the engagement of our institutions across the Pacific, and he has been and will be, I'm sure, as the leadership here in Hong Kong has been and will be, a strong supporter of our renewed educational exchange. The big question that I ask in my book, since the Germans led the universities, the world of universities in the 19th century, and the Americans had a pretty good 20th century, can China lead? And here I mean Greater China, with Hong Kong in some sense in the vanguard. Can China lead the world of universities? The answer, of course, is yes, but not alone. Because the great universities here in Hong Kong, like those in Beijing or in Nanjing or in Guangzhou, they have grown up in partnership with the great universities of Europe and North America. That's the company they have grown up with. That's the company they want to keep. And that is the company that in time they may lead. When one thinks of why this is important, finally, and let me conclude with this, what actually makes a country great, or a great international city like Hong Kong great? Is it the size of an army? Is it the size of an economy? Or is it the power of ideas and the institutions that create ideas? In the year 1936, on the 300th anniversary of Harvard University, we had a big celebration at our commencement, and Professor Hu Shi from Beida, from Beijing Daxue, came as China's representative to Harvard's 300th anniversary. And he was given an honorary degree. And those of you who have been to the Harvard campus will know that he also dedicated a stele, a shibei, in his calligraphy that sits next to our great Widener Library today. And here is what Hu Shi wrote about the centrality of learning for the making of nations. He wrote this: culture, he wrote it in Chinese, I should tell you, but I'm giving it to you in English. And he wrote it in wonderful classical Chinese, very difficult. He said, culture is the lifeblood of a nation. It is by virtue of its culture that a nation arrives. But truly it is due to learning, 学, that a culture flourishes. Intellectuals with deep knowledge and far-sighted vision understand that in establishing a solid foundation for their nation, the utmost priority must be given to the enhancement of learning. This is something that we believe very strongly at Harvard and in the United States, and very happily, I know, is believed very strongly here in Hong Kong. And that is why I must excuse myself right now to go and give a lecture in 20 minutes at the University of Hong Kong. So thank you very much.